Stupid. They're both vertical. Ugh. Well, at least there's two of them, I guess. What a mess, you guys. Are these two different streams or not? They are two different vertical streams. So what we're going to do is go ahead and end this one. And that leaves us with this one. Okay, all right. So we're in business now. I'm sorry about the chaos there. I'm really pissed off that we don't have the correct horizontal stream because that's how most people watch my streams. I swear to God, my computer's on crack sometimes. But Albert Hoffman synthesized LSD November 16th, 1938, while working with the ergot fungus. It was the 25th alkaloid. Wait, 3 waiting. Oh my God. It was the 25th alkaloid in a series derived of ergot alkaloids. And ergot is a fungus that grows on rye, and it is extremely toxic. If you eat it, it will have an effect that is very similar to consuming mercury. So your limbs will rot off, you will hallucinate, and you will die. So the difference is that if you extract the individual alkaloid from the ergot fungus, you will not die. So at any rate, let's go back to the original. Hold on, there's something in the chat. Yeah, I mean, people generally celebrate it on 420, but it was actually April 19th that he took the bicycle ride. So anyways, back to our story. November 16th, 1938, Albert Hoffman synthesized LSD, but he thought it was inactive. He gave it to mice and rats, and he saw no substantial effect. So their pupils dilated a little bit, but their heart rate increased and their blood pressure went down or something, but it wasn't anything major, and he thought, well, this is bullshit. So he put it on the shelf, and I guess, let's see, 1938 to 5 years later, in 1943, unfortunately, the same year Aleister Crowley died, I'm sure he would have loved to experience LSD. The story is, and this story makes no sense, and this is the one element of it that the conspiracy theorists kind of have maybe some ground to stand on, because, you don't just accidentally ingest even a small amount of a unknown compound derived from a fungus that is so toxic that it'll make your limbs rot off, and, so that part of the story actually doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely possible, and I 100% think that the people that are convinced that psychedelics and LSD are a government psyop are completely retarded. I mean, it's the dumbest fucking thing in the history of the universe. First of all, the government did not invent psychedelics. And although there is a substantial difference in the duration of LSD versus psilocybin and other natural psychedelics, anyone that's taken any of them knows that there are things that are fundamentally the same. It is a divine experience. I also cannot stand the people that, say, well, you should take something natural, You should take a brick to the face and stop judging people because, you know what I mean? I'm exaggerating, of course, but I think that one of the things that LSD showed us is that it's actually possible for mankind to work with nature and create something amazing and wonderful and beautiful. In fact, research and my own personal experience has established that LSD is substantially better for a lot of applications than ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin, any of these other things. In fact, both in, I guess it's situ and in vitro, so in the brain and... Oh shit, hold on. Yeah, so I live in Peru, and they turn the water off and on all the time in this neighborhood right now, and they just turned it on, so I just heard my shower and my faucets and everything start running. But I'm back. Although I'm really annoyed that we don't also have a horizontal. I didn't just not look at it. I set it up correctly. I swear to fucking God I did. So in both in vitro and in dishes, petri dishes, and in the brain alive, it causes more catalyzes more neurogenesis and enhances neuroplasticity far more than psilocybin, DMT, ketamine, or any of the other psychedelic compounds that we know of. So that means that it enhances memory and learning and probably other functions like helps with depression. All of these things actually better than psilocybin, LSD, or DMT. I was actually surprised. I assumed that it would be correlated with potency. So DMT would win also because one of the suspicions I have about the reason that psychedelics cause consciousness expansion is that the mind has to actually reformat itself in order to perceive what it's experiencing. You know, so when you smoke DMT and you're looking at an object that has, you know, a tesseract or something that's a shape that exists in 4 dimensions. So there's a dimension in time that you can't perceive. It's not that it isn't there. It kind of looks like it's moving. But it's because one of the dimensions the shape exists in is time, so it constantly looks like it's changing, even though it's not. It's just the precession of time. So you know what I mean? When the brain has to perceive things in 11 dimensions, whereas it normally only perceives them in 3, 4, 5, maybe, if you're a star seed or whatever. You know what I mean? So that's what I think, that the brain has to, you have to upgrade, the hardware has to upgrade itself in order to run the program, you know? And it's an incredible circumstance that these compounds have the effect on our physical brain, you know, the matter in the brain that they do. Giving it the plasticity to rapidly reconfigure itself and the ability to generate new neurons and neural pathways very rapidly in order to accommodate the experience and also to retain the information that is being conferred. So they're tremendously remarkable substances, all of them. I particularly have a soft spot for LSD. It was the first psychedelic that I ever took, and it also is the most useful for me because I don't have access to it in South America, which is one of the biggest disappointments of my entire life. If I could have LSD easily here and also be here, then I would be a pig in shit. But it's rather difficult and rather expensive and highly illegal. So I do miss California's $1.25 doses of pure LSD that could be bought on the street regularly, easily obtainable. What's everyone's altcoin? You want altcoin picks right now? Solana is safe, but if you want to make a lot of money, you need to find pre-launch AI cryptos. Doesn't even matter if they're good. Doesn't matter if they're scams even. As long as you pump and dump. As long as you buy pre-sale and then dump them if you don't know if it's a solid project. But that's way off topic right now. We can talk about that kind of stuff towards the end, except that I don't really have time because I have a gig to rehearse for, and I cannot miss my bicycle day. Okay, so back to the story. Albert Hoffman supposedly accidentally ingests about 250 micrograms of LSD. And the thing is that nothing should be active at that level. So it took a couple of days, I think. Maybe April 18th was the first time that he ever had any effect at all. He got some on his hand and then must have touched his mouth or something, because it's actually a myth that LSD will absorb through the skin. People say that's stupid. It doesn't happen. Like there are research videos where they have on camera, you can hold it all you want, nothing's going to happen. If you put it in your eyeball, in your nose, in any kind of thin membrane, then yes, it will absorb. But it's not going to absorb through the skin of your hand in any kind of, I mean, a little bit maybe, but it's a dumb myth. And we're going to get into myths later because there's plenty of them in regards to LSD. So he got some on him and he noticed that something happened. Got in his mouth somehow, rubbed his eye, who knows. And the thing is, the story might not actually be that circumspect because nothing that was known at the time was active in that microgram range. So, if he knows this stuff couldn't possibly, it's just, tiny trace of this relatively non-toxic substance. He's already given it to mice and rats. He knows that, a drop of it, actually the toxicity of LSD is less than vitamin C. So vitamin C will kill you before pure LSD will. And so, he knew all that. So maybe he was sloppy with it because he thought, nothing is active in this range. Who cares if I get a little bit in my eye or whatever? I don't know exactly what the deal was, but so he got a little bit on him and he felt weird. And then he went back and he's like, this must have been the compound that did that. So he deliberately took, I think it was 250, it may have been 500 micrograms. Either way, a pretty strong dose. An average street dose, people say they're hundreds. That's like the standard. They almost never are. They're 50, 60, or 80, max. So it's really rare that the white blotter you buy on the street is actually even 100 micrograms. So 250 is a pretty good solid trip. I've gotten stuck in a loop on 250 before, and I'm pretty experienced. I was sick, pretty sick, but still, 25 years, 30 years of experience, more at the time. And 200 got me stuck in a loop once for quite a while. It was an interesting loop. It was a long loop full of everything in human history, but it was a loop nevertheless. And so he took this relatively large dose of LSD. I had no idea what exactly was going to happen. And he got on his bike and he rode home. And he described it as a fantastic phasmagora of phantasms that overwhelmed him. So he pedaled his ass home as fast as he could. And I can't even imagine, you guys know what LSD does probably. Every single one of you watching has probably taken it before. And I just can't imagine. There's no precedent. He doesn't know what psilocybin is. He's, tripping bizzles and old already, kind of. I think he was 111 when he died and still doing Tai Chi. And he went home and laid down on the couch and he's like, oh, fuck, I'm going to die. So he calls the physician, convinced that the physician is going to be like, all right, bro, let me call the priest and we'll get you your last rites in and, you'll be all good. Just close your eyes and just let go into the light. And instead, the doctor's like, your heart rate is a little fast, probably because you're terrified, and your blood pressure is a little low. Other than that, all good, man. A little bit of vasoconstriction. You're just tripping balls, son, basically. So the doctor goes away, and he has this momentous 250 microgram first trip in the world. And obviously, things have never been the same. The impact that LSD has had on the modern world is still it's definitely underestimated, I guess, would be the way to say that. And so, a lot of people just, if you don't really look into it hard, you're not really going to realize how many things actually came from LSD experiences. Francis Crick's discovery of DNA is one of those things. A study done about 10 years ago concluded that Silicon Valley probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for LSD. The influence of the Grateful Dead, I think, is way fucking bigger than most mainstream people realize. The way that it changed consciousness and the number of people that were packed into those stadiums like sardines for 30 years. And, the Grateful Dead, actually, their sound man supplied most of the 1960s and 70s with LSD. His name was Augustus Stanley Owsley III. He was a Kentucky whiskey heir. He inherited a shit ton of money. And then he met a girl in the Bay Area that taught him how to make LSD. And Bear was an alchemist. And he was he was serious about this process. He felt like it was a spiritual thing to make LSD. The environment had to be completely under control. No shady people around. Oddly like our attitude towards cooking ayahuasca in the jungle. And so he started making like bathtubs full of LSD. He made so much LSD that the entire world could never have consumed it all. One liquid ounce of, this is how potent it is, okay? 1 liquid ounce of LSD is enough for 100,000 mild doses or 300,000 strong doses. Now, a soda can is 12 ounces, okay? Undiluted. How much LSD is that? Exactly. So the liter that he gave John Lennon as a gift of undiluted LSD. What was he ever going to do with that? You know what I mean? So Bear, which is his nickname, that's where the Grateful Dead Dancing Bears actually come from. He was also the Dead Sound Man. So they had like the acid tests with the author Ken Kesey before LSD was even illegal. And I actually bought from Ken Kesey's son at one point a DVD that had all of the existing video from the acid tests. I'm sure you can find some of it on YouTube now. But it was wild. You know, there were Hell's Angels dancing around all happy with all these pre-hippie hippies. You know, and there's a video of Augustus of Bear. Let's call him Bear since I keep choking on his name. Like pouring crystal LSD into these giant barrels with Kool-Aid and mixing it up. And there are people naked climbing across the rafters. There's a dude with a mirror in his hand, and he's brushing his hair straight up in the air. The Grateful Dead played their first gig as the Grateful Dead in one corner, and the Merry Prankster Band was simultaneously playing on the other side. So there's just this insane cacophony of musicians, brains fucking melting on LSD. But the Grateful Dead said that, you know, eventually they had taken so much LSD for so long because, what's his name? Bear actually said, okay, you guys, I'll pay for everything. I'll buy your instruments. I'll rent the house. But you have to, this is my hand. This is Jerry. This is Bobby. This is Phil. This, you know, and if anything on my hand is not doing what I tell it to, then we have a problem. So he is actually the one that conceived of this idea of a telepathic jam band, and he made them practice on LSD every day. So Bob Weir was only 16 years old, and he started consuming LSD pretty much every day in quantities that most of you can't even imagine. Garcia said that there was crystal LSD dustings like on the refrigerator. And so, you know, they eventually said that they were able to disengage the filters in our nervous system so that they were able to transcend the absurdly narrow perspective of a single ego, and they could switch bodies on stage. They could go out in the audience and inhabit someone's body and watch from the audience, and all sorts of insane things. They said they learned to watch the hallucinations, respond to the music, and so if they were having trouble getting a telepathic link, then they would just use the hallucinations to guide the improvisations. And then, you know, that led to all kinds of, Owsley would take a lot of LSD himself. He started studying sound, and it completely revolutionized the concert industry. There were no monitors on stage, so you couldn't have microphones in front of monitors. The Grateful Dead fixed that. They invented passive or active pickups. I mean, all of this stuff. It's just absolutely insane. The Grateful Dead story alone and the impact. Think of it this way. You know what a jug band is? A jug band is fucking literal jugs and kazoos and shit. The Grateful Dead started out as one of those. They take LSD, make $1 billion. You know, jug band takes acid, makes $1 billion, changes the planet. Like, it sounds like some stupid ass comic book or something, but it's true. By the time they were done, they were having the speakers in their sound system. It was $11 million just in R&D. And they were using space shuttle surplus to build the cones and the speakers and wiring from the space shuttle and everything. And they had this device that NASA uses to measure the distance to stars based on the vibration they put off. And they use this thing, they integrate it into their sound system to tune every seat in a stadium so it sounds exactly the same. One of their sound systems could project sound for a half mile without breaking up. So my point is this, you know, the kind of innovation that is catalyzed by LSD, you know, the people that say, well, you should be able to do it without acid, show me someone who has. Show me one person. Show me somebody that's gone to the moon without a space shuttle. You know what I mean? It's technology. People need to stop. You cannot compete with, okay, let's talk about the brain scans. Let's talk about the brain scans, right? Have you guys seen this? Princeton? They did brain scans of people on LSD and psilocybin, and there was electrical activity in parts of the brain that we do not ever use, ever. Not master meditators, not super geniuses, not nobody anywhere ever. Ever. So, you know, and then also there's like 100 times as much electrical activity or something, and then you have all this enhanced neuroplasticity and neurogenesis and stuff, and, you know, I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous to think that you can compete with that. You know, it's like saying that, oh, shouldn't you be able to outrun a Lamborghini on your feet? You know, don't be dumb. That's not going to happen. And you're not going to innovate or be more creative than someone on acid. anyone that understands Tool or the Grateful Dead or even Fish, any of these like really, really advanced acid bands, you understand that like they're so far beyond other types of musicians that like people that are too stuck in their matrix mentality can't even perceive the music correctly. You know what I mean? So it really is. I think honestly, LSD is the most important development in the last 2,000 years or something. I mean, you know, barring the fact, man-made, you know. And what I was saying earlier that I kind of went off on a tangent and didn't finish explaining is this cooperation between man and nature. You know, I think it's a really beautiful testament to the fact that it's not true that every time we fuck around with nature, Hiroshima and Nagasaki happens. You know, it's possible for us to actually create beautiful, divine, holy things that take mankind a step forward, or 2 or 10 or 12 or 100. You know, if you consider, I'm not saying necessarily that having smartphones is good for us, but you know, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates even said that he used to go out into the woods and take LSD. And, you know, I mean, I don't like Bill Gates. I'm just saying, like, in every arena on earth, when you look at who is the most advanced, they're always on acid. You know what I mean? At some point, it is definitely a catalyst that drives human evolution, you know? And I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow sometimes, but it's provable. Just look at history, you know? Even athletes, X Games athletes, it's routine for them to take 100 micrograms of LSD before competing, and it's considered cheating because your balance and your reaction time and your just overall cognition is greased lightning compared to your normal state as long as you don't overdo it. You know, it is the ultimate cheat code for everything. It's true. You know, and you might be saying, well, what's your excuse, bro? My excuse is that I accidentally went to South America thinking I was going to be here a few months, and now 6 years later, I'm still kind of stuck here. You know what I mean? If I could do it all over again, I mean, I'm not trying to get too much into my personal story, but if I could do it all over again, I would not have left. And primarily because of access to LSD and the live music scene. Like, that's, you know, that's the reality of it. So, yeah, that's probably a circumstance that I can transcend now, but it's something that I have definitely felt like, you know, it was a very sore spot in my world to have disconnected from the California LSD and music scene. Shouldn't have did that. You guys got to watch out when you meet a girl. There's apparently something happens and our brain melts, you know. It's kind of like what people used to say that LSD does to your brain. I think women do that, actually, much more than LSD. Okay, so there's so much more interesting trivia, and I have limited time, but one of the interesting, most interesting aspects of all of this, you know, there's MK Ultra, which has caused a lot of stupidity from the Christian right wing kind of, and all the conspiracy theorists that just don't think things through and believe whatever they read on the internet. There's all sorts of dumb fuckery to wade through in regards to what happened there, and people. You know, I almost hate even posting about psychedelics because there's always some fucking mouth-drooling flat earther that, you know, believes that it was all a government psyop and all of this kind of shit. And I'm just so tired of hearing about it. I almost don't even want to talk about it, but I guess I have to because it's part of the story, right? But first, the mystery schools. This I actually disagree with Dr. Hoffman about. He believed that the Eleusinian Mysteries, which employed a drink called it wasn't the drink, the kykeon was, I think, the container that served the beverage. And Dr. Hoffman thought that it was ergot beer. And it is true that they found ergot mashed into the teeth of a skull in one of the buildings where the Eleusinian Mysteries occurred. And that is weird, right? Because you know what happens if you eat ergot without making it into LSD first? you get mercury poisoning, basically. It's not mercury poisoning, but it's almost indistinguishable. And what did we used to fill cavities with? Mercury. So here's this old skull with a bunch of ergot crammed into its cavities. It's just really weird, right? I mean, I think it is. But I disagree with Dr. Hoffman. He was a chemist. He knew how to make things non-toxic and how to do it safely. And the reality is that experimenting with ergot fungus would have cost a lot of lives, and it would have been a terrible fucking way to die. So I don't think that that's the answer. I think that acacia and Syrian rue, which would have been available both in the Syrian and Babylonian deserts where the mysteries originated and in Greece. So the plants were available in both places, and Freemasons who are connected to these mysteries are still to this day buried with acacia leaves that contain DMT as a portal to the next world. So, I think I've solved the mystery that Dr. Hoffman failed to solve, I think. But still, it's an interesting anecdote, and he may be correct, and apparently it is possible to brew an LSD-like beer with ergot fungus without processing it. So I guess, it's probably really important to talk about how to use LSD correctly and the kind of applications. And also the abuses. First of all, it is not true. Anyone that tells you I took a massive dose of LSD and I tripped for 3 days, they're full of shit, they're exaggerating, they're lying. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. And you might say, well, my friend said, and I believe him, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. It's not true. There were 10 people in 2 separate groups of 5 that consumed at least 20,000 micrograms of LSD each. Now, considering that 100 micrograms is a decent trip, that is a fuck ton of LSD, right? What happened in both cases is that some drug dealer, some probably rave kid or something, had a baggie that he thought was MDMA. And I don't know you guys know how much a gram of LSD costs? Like $14,000 last time I checked, and it's probably way more now because the demand has skyrocketed, and ergot fungus is like $50,000 an ounce now. Don't ask me why I know all this stuff. Mind your own damn business. Yeah, last time I was in the States, it was like $14K for, speaking of the Grateful Dead, there was a dude, you know how they stand out and they're like doses, mushrooms, whatever? This guy had grams of LSD. Like, what is going on in Grateful Dead parking lots where you can sell a $14,000 bag of LSD? And he's just standing there in LA like, grrs, I got grams. It's mind-blowing. But anyways, so 20,000 micrograms of LSD. Somebody accidentally pours out and they take big lines of it thinking it's, meth or MDMA, or probably I'm thinking MDMA, or even cocaine. I mean, maybe they were super high and who knows, man, but that's what happened. And so they all went to the hospital thinking, well, we're going to die. Like, we're never coming back from this. And so 8 to 12 hours later, they were all back to baseline, 8 to 12 hours, in both groups of 5 people that did this, okay? 20,000 mics. Your friend that said he tripped for 3 days from taking 5 hits was lying or delusional, or he has some brain chemistry problem or something. Doesn't do that. And there's a reason why it does that. There is a ceiling. So, and this is one of the beautiful things about LSD. It has mechanisms built into it. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider joining my Patreon or making a contribution via the options in the chat because I'm demonetized and so I get nothing. The most metal gift of all, nothing, for doing these streams. So I really do appreciate your support. We're about to make an excursion to the Temple of the Sun, which is apparently an unknown Machu Picchu that's even better than Machu Picchu. But I have to pay people. I have to put a crew together, and I have to make this a professional thing, and it takes money, and it's not coming out of my pocket. We have to, as a community, make these things happen, or I'm just not doing it because I can't. So, I'd really like to get in there and see what kind of mysteries we can uncover. That sort of thing. So anyways, all 10 of these people do this massive amount of LSD. They're all back to baseline in the normal amount of time, and they checked back with them all 5 years later, and none of them had a flashback. None of them had hallucinogen perceptive whatever disorder. I don't think that's real either. I think people they take LSD or mushrooms and they actually change their consciousness, and then they're like, oh shit, I broke my brain. No. The parameters of your perception have expanded because you took the filters down. They don't go all the way back up. There's an old saying in LSD culture that you never actually come down. But what that actually means is that you have just, turn down the filters in your nervous system so you're perceiving more of the universe. This is why DMT causes an occult hangover, you know, where you have all of these enhanced perceptions. I saw someone on Rogan the other day that was a totally normal guy, you know, and he's like, I smoked a bunch of DMT and like I was just perceiving way too much of the universe afterwards. And that's it. You know, it's not your imagination. You haven't broke your brain. You haven't lost your mind. Telepathy is real. Precognition happens. Psychedelics increase communication between different parts of the brain. So when your subconscious makes a connection with the conscious, all sorts of things change. Not only are you able to negate some of the automatic processes that dictate your behavior because of this new level of awareness. I believe that, you know, for example, synchronicities, which Carl Jung said occur because of this process of building a bridge in the mind. The effect could be like it's not an allegory, but it's the correlation, I guess, is that your internal world now has a greater degree of symmetry with your external world. And so you start to perceive these symmetries of a higher order that weren't not available to you before you connected these hemispheres of your brain. In fact, I think that based on what we know about the brain and how it works, it's kind of ridiculous to think that if you are having electrical activity in parts of the brain where there never is any, what does that mean? And when you're connecting parts of the brain and there's greater communication, to really refuse to believe that could legitimately lead to a greater comprehension and expanded powers of perception is kind of ridiculous. You know, that's exactly what would happen. And we know that nobody hit the like button last time I asked. All right, good night, you guys. Ungrateful fucking, just kidding. Actually, LSD is pretty easy to get right now. Somebody said in the chat it's not easy to get. There's all kinds of rumors about that. Let me make sure. Did I finish my rant about how, you know, the parameters of what's available to you to perceive are expanded by psychedelics and it's not, you didn't break your brain. I think we've had enough of that, so we can talk about this. Speaking of myths, hey, thank you guys for smashing the like button. That's amazing and incredible. I battle with the algorithm. YouTube did not like me. They did not approve of my messages for people to abandon all narratives and think for themselves. In fact, I had a chat with them asking why no one was getting notified of my videos. And I said, I took a screenshot. I have proof. I said, do you guys deprioritize creators that you find controversial? And they ignored the question and told me to tell my subscribers to use the troubleshooter. So I really do appreciate your support. And so where are we going with this? All right, so dirty LSD. I have never, ever known an LSD chemist. Like, he's not, you know, there aren't pictures of him on Facebook standing in front of a Rolls Royce in front of the towering Pisa. Like, they say there's only 7 of these guys in the world. The DEA says there's only 7 of them in the world at a time, and they almost never catch them. And they said when they catch their runners, you know, their right-hand men and stuff, they've never ratted once. Pretty amazing, even though they're looking at life. It's pretty wild shit. But anyways, never known an LSD chemist. Not like I'm from California or anything. Never met a Brotherhood of Eternal Love guy either. Wouldn't go anywhere near people like that. But the LSD chemist that I've never met explained to me, and it makes absolute sense if you just stop and think about it, that there's no such thing as dirty LSD. People are like, oh, is it clean? Did it make your back hurt? If it made your back hurt, it's because you have tension in your body. You know, if you had an upset stomach, it's because you ate something you shouldn't have before you took the LSD. LSD is LSD. A molecule of LSD is LSD. And there are impurities that can be retained, and there are different grades of crystal. That's absolutely true. Silver crystal, for example, is a bit... So there is such a thing as dirty LSD. What I mean, though, is that you're taking a microscopic quantity, even at large doses. There is no contaminant. There is no byproduct. There is no analog. There is nothing that is going to be produced in the process of making LSD that is going to affect you in any way, shape, or form. The main thing there, the LSD molecule, that represents, the worst LSD chemist, that's going to be like 80% pure. Owsley got it 99.99% pure. Okay? So there is no impurity that is going to affect you that is produced when you make LSD. So dirty LSD is a total myth. And then when people say you got to watch out for these research chemicals, that can be true. There are compounds that are similar to LSD that are not as safe. LSD is pretty much impossible to overdose on. I think it's actually seriously like a gallon or something that you have to drink in order to die. It's, while we're on the subject, I saw a guy on PBS lying through his teeth about that LSD story I told you. Remember the guys I told you that did the lines of 20,000 micrograms and they were all back to baseline in 12 hours and didn't have any side effects after 5 years, all 10 of them? All 10 of them. I saw a guy on PBS telling about the story, and he said they were having internal hemorrhaging and all. It was all lies. I 100% caught the mainstream media bold-face lying about the toxicity and danger of LSD. I mean, and that's way over the top exaggeration, loony style. Let me look at the... but what I was saying is that most of the LSD analogs that you can buy, 1P LSD is already almost LSD, and then when it's metabolized in the body, it's a prodrug, which means that it actually becomes the other drug. And that's not 100% certain, but people do test positive for LSD after taking 1P LSD. There are metabolites that are connected, so it's a 90% certainty that 1P LSD actually does become LSD. The thing is, you lose about 30% in the metabolization process, but it's LSD. The molecule that is affecting you is LSD, pure LSD. ALD52 becomes LSD on contact with H2O. So if you buy ALD52, as soon as it hits your tongue, it turns into LSD. So, a lot of the things that people say about these analogs, about how they don't quite feel the same, and it's all their imagination. If you buy analogs that are prodrugs for LSD or that are converted on contact with water or because of metabolism, it's LSD. It's more non-toxic than vitamin C. Oh, and what I was saying about the beauty of it, right? It has built-in mechanisms against abuse. I actually rambled right through that. Damn it, earlier. I started to talk about this, and I forgot because I'm a lot on my mind. Attention, Illuminostic. Pay attention. What I was saying is there is abuse, safety mechanisms built into the structure of all psychedelics, really, except for ayahuasca and DMT, because they don't ever stop working. You could drink it. I've drank ayahuasca for a week, almost constantly, with only 4 hours of sleep between, because it was a certain type of training, and no problems, but you don't. It doesn't stop working or anything. But psilocybin and LSD, on the other hand, if you take some LSD, then you have to double the dose the next day to get the same effect. So for most people, very, very rapidly, your tolerance is going to go so high that if you try to abuse this drug, it's just going to stop working. Unless you're in the Grateful Dead and your sound man has got 82 pounds of it crystallized in the closet. In that case, you can do what they did. And they said they remained on LSD for a year, basically. And by the way, research tells us that you won't go insane unless you're predisposed to mental illness, no matter how much you take and no matter how long. And I challenge any of you that are not familiar with the Grateful Dead, go look for an interview with Jerry Garcia or Bob Weir and tell me that it did anything but make them more intelligent. They're so absurdly brilliant and quick-witted, it's not natural. It's not natural. Also, they never played the same song same way twice, and they never repeated a set list in 30 years. No band on earth does that. How do you do that? How do you, they say drugs ruin your brain. That was the old thing they used to say. How the fuck did the Grateful Dead play different concerts every single night for 30 years? They repeated one in 1981 and 91. Other than that, different show every time for 30 years. So, Just throwing that in there, because we need to not have these false conceptions about what these compounds do and how dangerous they are, because it causes a lot of damage. People take them and they have this in the back of their head, like, I'm going to lose my mind, I'm going to break my brain, I'm going to be retarded. You can actually have that happen just because you have believed the propaganda, so don't do that. And I'm also not suggesting that the average person consumes LSD for a year, but everyone in the Grateful Dead did, and they're obviously fine. It did them absolutely no harm, and the overwhelming evidence is that it actually did them a tremendous amount of good, because they evolved from a jug band to this fucking monster that very quickly was not anything like a jug band. So back to the story at hand. Another Grateful Dead rant got me kind of derailed. I think we were talking about safety and efficacy, and the safety mechanisms that are built into the compounds. So not only does it stop working if you keep taking it, unless, like I said, you have a fucking barrel full of crystal LSD, it also has a ceiling. So I don't know about psilocybin. I'm pretty sure it also does, but I know that LSD, basically, once there's enough of it lodged in your receptors, the rest of it just washes through. I think it's 5,000 micrograms or 2,500. It's either 2,500 or 5,000. So once you get to this point, it won't do anything more. There's a maximum dose, and then the rest of it just washes through your system. So, I used to know deadheads, of course, that would say, you got to eat a sheet, and it's like, well, you could just eat a quarter sheet, and then that would be the max. So you're wasting the other 75 hits of LSD, which is, tragic. So what else should we say about this? This is the most condensed version of this that I've ever done. I'm really just trying to get to the bullet points, because I'm way behind on my preparations for tomorrow night's gig at Burdock Brewing Company in Urubamba, Peru. I'm going to be playing psychedelic rock in the Sacred Valley, which is something that is missing here and belongs here for sure. So let me look at the chat, make sure. If you guys have any questions or anything, any more myths you want me to dispel, or any kind of technical questions about any of this stuff, I'm happy to Yeah, it is safe and effective. You know what? I'm not trying to brag, but the second time I took LSD, it was so obvious to me what it was for. I was 14 or 15, and I told my friend, I bet you can treat every known mental illness with this stuff. It's not hard to figure out. I was a little kid, and I knew right away. And of course, I found out shortly afterwards that in the 1960s, people think that the government was told, these compounds are dangerous. You need to ban them because they're going to fucking erase people's minds, and white women are going to be sleeping with N-words, and, all that kind of stuff. Jazz musicians will take it so there's more space between the notes and they can fit more notes in, or whatever the hell they said in those old videos. But people think that the researchers said, this is dangerous, you should not allow people to have it. That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. It's actually the opposite. Humphrey Osmond and the other researchers that were commissioned by the U.S. government to evaluate these compounds for danger and efficacy actually said, and I quote, we can treat every known mental illness with these compounds, and oftentimes with a single dose. 1966, Dr. Humphrey Osmond. When the U.S. government got that report, they said, send men with guns and shut this shit down right now. That's what actually happened. All right. So again, 2015 at Johns Hopkins University, psilocybin study. One of the researchers, psychiatrists, said, it is simply unprecedented in the history of medicine that one compound can treat so many mental disorders and oftentimes cure them in a single dose. Gee, it's almost like we heard that 50 years ago. But let's actually do some math here. Let's talk about the harm. Okay, so if it's true, and it is, even the guy that founded, one of the guys of the two that founded NA and AA, not only was he a Freemason, but the 13th step was going to be LSD. So you go through the 12 steps, and then you're given LSD to make sure it sticks. That was his plan, and that's why they split, and there was the divide in the NA and AA people, right? So they knew this back then. And if you consider that it's been like what, since 1966 when they outlawed LSD and psilocybin, DMT, all of it, I think all at once. How many years now? It is 2024. Is that correct? So hella long time. Lots of years. How many, if it's true, and it is, because this is backed by tremendous piles of fucking research at this point, that cigarette cessation, right? 85% more than any other known therapy are still tobacco-free after 5 years with psilocybin. LSD is more effective than psilocybin as well for this, for repatterning the brain. You know, that's what the neuroplasticity and neurogenesis is why you're able to recondition memories and habits and stuff so rapidly with this stuff and to retain more information and whatnot. So just cigarettes alone, how many fucking people have died from cancer because the US government lied about LSD and psilocybin? How many people in over 50 years? Right. What about alcohol, DUIs, murders, wives beaten to death, families destroyed? 85% more effective than any other treatment. How many people? How much suffering? What has your government really done to you? What has it done to all of us? Think about this. Now, let's move on to another category where psychedelics are almost 100% more effective than any other known treatment. Depression. How many suicides could have been averted? How many? How many suicides? So now we have alcoholism that, you know, we could have removed the overwhelming majority of the harm from it. Drug addiction, depression, PTSD, on and on and on and on and on. So, and here's the thing. They knew the whole fucking time. And they lied. And look at the social cost, the harm, the societal cost. Not only that, but how many people's lives, so what happens when all these people free themselves from all of these things that psychedelics help with? They become productive members of societies. They invent things. They become maybe enlightened politicians. Like this prohibition of psychedelics has done more harm to the human race than probably any other influence in human history besides Christianity. So... so he's asking about the rainbow field static, and it's crazy that like somebody can say something like that to me, and I know exactly what he's talking about. Like, you know, if these things aren't real, like, okay, so let's put it this way. So let's say all 21 of us take a trip to Egypt, we go to the pyramids, and we all look out and we're like, what is that? And everyone says, there's big fucking pyramids out there. Okay, so what kind of environment are they in? Desert. Where are we? Egypt. What's above us? Sky, right? And we all go, okay, so we know the pyramids are real, that we're really in the desert and the sky is blue above us. We can all agree on that, so we'll call it real. It's consensus reality. Mantids, the DMT fucking mantids, like, you know, if you have enough people seeing these things, probably real. So, and then the rainbow static he's talking about is like this stuff that floats in the air when you take psilocybin, ketamine, LSD, towards the end of ayahuasca experiences, but the aesthetic of DMT is a little bit different. So, you know, particularly with psilocybin and LSD, you know, and so what my answer to that is that those are real. I don't know exactly what it is. It's probably a part of the light spectrum that we don't normally perceive. Being refracted by something, you know, some field. Like we might even be seeing the electromagnetic field itself. That's possible. So I think some people don't have the full filtration system at birth. This is what schizophrenics are. You know, they're not exactly just imagining things. They're walking between worlds and they've been overwhelmed by it. You know, there are different types of schizophrenia, of course. But in fact, anthropologists classify shamans as essential schizophrenics. So, you know, by the matrix definition, it's this ability to perceive these things is schizophrenia, which I think is, of course, completely just ridiculous. But that's what I'm saying. Like, part of your filtration system is permanently down, so you can always see these things. I mean, I'm pretty sure you were telling me a few weeks ago that you've gone to psychiatrists and stuff, and they tell you all kinds of stupid shit. No, it's just part of your nervous system filter is down, and you're perceiving a little bit more of the spectrum of light than people normally do. And because the shamanic tradition in our culture has been obscured by history and deliberately occulted, your psychologist doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I kind of went off. Man, I really failed with the conceptual continuity tonight, and I apologize for that. I'm also probably running out of time, which is unfortunate because this is such a fabulous subject. The Western mystery tradition is a European shamanic tradition, by the way. For those of you that think that Europeans and white people or whatever don't have a shamanic tradition, not to mention the Celts and the Druids and the Norse and all these people used all kinds of psychedelics and, but the Western mystery tradition is indeed a shamanic tradition. So just wanted to mention that it's not true, that like Timothy Leary was a shaman. I don't care what anyone says. It's really unfortunate that he's kind of been forgotten because he had one of the highest IQs in recorded human history, and a lot of his ideas in his psychological models were actually adapted without giving him credit for the same reasons that Carl Jung didn't give Aleister Crowley credit. And if you don't believe that, take a look at the Red Book, Liber, what is it called? Liber something, Aleister Crowley's little red book, Liber Legis. The point of them is exactly the same, but he didn't want to discredit himself, so he just never mentioned Crowley. But if you know them both, then you know for sure. So the same thing is true of Timothy Leary in modern psychology. But anyways, what I'm saying is his books and influence, he was incredibly brilliant. I mean, way more important than Terence McKenna. In fact, Terence McKenna was kind of full of shit. He lied about the time wave zero mathematics. He faked the mathematics to make it appear that his theory was correct when he knew it wasn't. He was a bit of a shyster. Timothy Leary was, a genuine prophet, in my opinion. A lot of people say that he was a government agent or whatever, which is stupid. That rumor actually originates in the fact that he used his extremely superior IQ and expanded consciousness to make fools of some federal cops and get himself out of prison. It's true that he gave a bunch of information to the feds when he was in prison, doing life for 2 joints because he was going to win governor of California. And they weren't having that shit. Can you imagine Governor Leary putting LSD in the drinking water and shit? What was I saying about him? Oh, yeah. So he gave them all this information about all these people that they were asking about, but he did it in a way that no one was ever charged with anything because it was all bullshit. And he deliberately only gave them information that he knew couldn't result in any charges. And they let him out of prison. So they actually changed the protocol because of Timothy Leary so that you don't let people out until there are convictions based on the information that you received. So that's actually the origins of the Timothy Leary is a CIA agent bullshit. It's fucking retarded. He was just such a massively important influence on me as a child that I'm genuinely sad that people don't really talk about him anymore. I think it's a huge tragedy. Hey, what's going on? Good to see you back in the chat. Appalachian Alchemy. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes for questions, but I got to get back to my playing. I might do it live because I just have to practice the songs. It just sucks because my notifications. Well, fuck it, dude. I'm going to do my rehearsal tonight live. So don't expect perfect performances because it's going to be live rehearsal, but I'll do that, It's fine. Might as well just turn the camera on if I'm going to be sitting here noodling around anyways. Plus, I make money when I do that. Somebody mentioned that they see the rainbow halos. Damn it, my alarm's going off in there. The rainbow halos when they don't sleep. There's all of these different things that you do bring down the filters in your mind. Sleep deprivation is a bad way to do it, but it does it. Starvation and dehydration will do it. Masturbating for an entire day will do it. It's just that psychedelics are the most reliable and they're the most complete method of accessing transcendental modalities. And as Terence McKenna said, people say you can get a lot higher without drugs than with them. And if you just look at the literature, it doesn't reflect that. I don't see any meditators inventing new sound systems and technologies, and you know what I mean? Not the way that the people that were catalyzed by LSD have. So, people say things because they want to believe woo, I think. That's really the motivation. They're like, they want to believe that God made us perfect. It's like the influence of religion, that there's some kind of like ethereal thing. And there kind of is. But, we're in a 3D matrix, and we are bound to certain rules, and we have chemicals as catalysts, and we have matter that has to be reconfigured in order to process things, and it's just how the world is, So all of those people that say, you can do these things without it, show me somebody that has beaten the psychedelic mind in any arena, and I'll eat my words, but you will not. You will not. Rehearsal for what? I'm playing down the street at a club tomorrow night. And my guitar is still fucked up, so the luthier is actually coming all the way from Cusco at 8 o'clock in the morning, which pisses me off to no end. I was hoping he would come at like noon or something. I don't want to be up at 8 in the morning. I got a gig until 2 a.m., So if you guys have any more questions, I'll give you a few minutes to put them in the chat, and I'm going to go turn that alarm off because it's really getting on my nerves. So another thing that I didn't mention earlier is that in order to use LSD for like addiction therapy or any kind of therapy really, for mind and body alike, there is no purgative like pranayama, pranayama, pranayama. For mind and body alike, there is no purgative like pranayama, pranayama, pranayama. So take about 100 micrograms of LSD and do pranayama and hold the breath as you focus on the new program that you're trying to run, that you're trying to install. And then you go through the cycle of the fourfold breath, which is pretty easy, basic pranayama. And in about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of doing that, I forgot that I was a cigarette smoker the next day. I had been smoking for like 25 years. I put my hand in my pocket in the evening and found a pouch of tobacco, and I was like, that's right. I was a smoker yesterday. It's that effective. It's that effective. That's why when the researchers say, we can treat things with a single dose, they're not kidding, but you have to know how to do it. And then luckily, it's not even hard. It's not hard to rewrite new patterns using LSD and psilocybin, particularly LSD though, especially if you know a little bit of pranayama. Because when you are holding the breath in, you're inundating the brain with the fuel that it needs to reconfigure all of its constituent elements. And you're building new neuronal, actual literal cells and dendrites and stuff super fast. So that's how it's used. And then you can also use it that way to learn stuff. Languages you can retain much more quickly, music especially. So the trick is to learn to regulate the breath and We called it building your acid muscles in California. You know, my band would take LSD and then practice, 60 hours a week or something. We didn't work, so that's what we do. And over time, you can increase the dose up pretty high. It's not the same as tolerance. You just kind of know how to be in there, Like Fish claims that they used to drink an entire vial of 100 doses of LSD before going on stage pretty routinely. Because once you just get to the point where, you just learn to do it. It's like anything else, riding a bike, or there are people that master this. Like when I drink ayahuasca to lead ceremony, for example, I don't get confused. People become disoriented and they have trouble moving around and stuff. That doesn't happen to me. I'm exactly the same concision as if I'm totally in a normal state. Of course, I'm not drinking a huge dose or anything, but still, the point is just that you develop this sort of navigational capacity that comes with experience. And so the higher the dose, the more insight and benefit there is. But you have to start out at 60, 80, 100 and play guitar. And people have told me so many times, oh, I can't do anything if I'm tripping. It's because you lower the dose then, lower the dose a little bit, and you're going to do whatever it is you do better than you ever did before. There are people that cannot juggle unless they take LSD, because when you're using more of your brain, you just have more capacity. That's all there is to it, It's a very simple equation. It's just a matter of culturally getting over the biases and the stereotypes and the stigmas associated with these things, so we can employ them to their fullest benefit and capacity, which is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. Precognitive events, telepathy, accelerated learning, transcendental modalities of consciousness. I mean, there's just so much that these compounds offer to the human race that are fundamentally essential, and in my opinion, are the reason why we have, the lack of that influence, those influences, has completely fucked off humanity. A few hours away from Chicago. Huh. You're always moving around. Do I play classical guitar? I don't have one. Here, let me see. Let's see if I play classical guitar. I mean, it doesn't really sound quite like a nylon, but I think that was the Nutcracker Suite by Tchaikovsky. But sure, yeah, if I have sheet music in front of me, I mean, I haven't memorized any really, but I can get this off. Certainly, if I have sheet music, I can play fingerstyle, if that's what you mean. I used to play a lot of Balkan mountain range music, which is just absolutely incredibly haunting and beautiful and amazing, and I really, really like it a lot. So, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. I don't see really any questions pertaining to LSD in the chat. So, none of this constitutes medical advice, and I'm certainly not advocating for anything. Although, if I was allowed to, I probably would totally advocate for it. And the thing is, just you got to forget about the doubt, and the fear, because psychedelics do not make you insane. They do increase intelligence. In fact, there were 2 people in one Harvard study that were of below average or normal intelligence and were given LSD and achieved a genius IQ. This is not normal, but it has happened. It's been documented. It's happened. And it could be that they were geniuses and they had a psychological block that, you know, they overcame because of the therapeutic elements. I think that it's probably just a matter of bringing the filter down, because I think genius is not really something a person has so much as something they're connected to. Another brilliant study, they had, I can't remember how many scientists of different types and thinkers of different types, and the criteria was that they had to be stuck on a problem for, I think, 9 months or more. And then they were given LSD, and something like 90% of them solved the problem like instantly. A couple of the physicists wrote the equations on the board with the part they couldn't figure out, and they said the LSD just filled it in for them. You know, there was a shit ton of stories from the study like that. So, you know, the possibilities are almost as limitless as consciousness. It's really, really important, though, to decondition your preconceptions if you have been polluted by, 50 years of lies about psychedelic compounds. Oh yeah, and it's not in your head. It's not in your head at all. I was in a band that would take LSD and go and perform, but we didn't always do it. And someone noticed at one point, and actually numerous people commented on this eventually, but this one guy in particular came up to me and he's like, "I've noticed something about you guys. You're not even that good if you're not on acid. But then when you're on acid, it's one of the craziest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. It makes that much of a difference, you know?" So... and also singing. I would usually use MDMA for that because it connects you to your body and your emotions more, and that's more important. But every single time I took MDMA and went and performed, somebody inevitably would come up to me and say, like, "God damn, man, you're not that good of a singer normally, but tonight, what the fuck was that? You know, how did you just suddenly..." Don't underestimate psychedelics. You know, they really are just the most remarkable tool on earth for healing, for acquiring almost preternatural abilities to do things. It's a life hack for acquiring talent. You're still gonna have to work, but don't believe the lies. I mean, look at what happens when you take them with your eyes. You know, the pupil dilates and suddenly you're perceiving more of the spectrum of light. That's why your pupils dilate in order to do that. Well, what happens when they dilate when there's the normal amount of light? You're perceiving a wider bandwidth. And then some incredible percentage of reality that normally is invisible to you is now visible. So, yeah, that's what these things are for. That's how they're used. And I really do have to get to work on my show. I'm a little bit sad to see people piling on again, and we've already been through the meat and potatoes. But I have to make sure that, I haven't performed publicly in 3 years, so I really got to make sure my set is together. Like I said, I'm just going to practice live, so give me 15 minutes to warm up my voice. And then I will pop on to do a music stream. And please consider supporting the channel because, I just can't justify all the hours I put in demonetized without support from the community. If you join my Patreon, you definitely get value. You can join for screen time, and I will answer any kind of questions or teach you about any of the various subjects that I am well acquainted with, guitar lessons, occult and ritual magic instruction, plant medicine instruction, flow state access, flow state lifestyle instruction, and we do a secret stream every week that for the last year or so has been basically Masonic secrets, and I'm not trying to brag, but the last couple of those have been fucking fired. Like, the material is so deep and so profound that, after 30 years, well, let's see. I guess the Freemasonry specifically came more in my 30s, so it was 15 years of studying this kind of material. I still, in the last couple of streams, was like, I'd hit certain spots and I'm like, no fucking way, really? Like, this is the 50th time I've read this and I'm just now understanding, And then so when that happens to me, I'll explain it to you. So I save you decades, or a decade and a half maybe. You might be smarter than me. Maybe you'd see it right away. I don't know. But the point is, I think with my experience to sort of extrapolate and elucidate, pontificate for your edification and amusement, you get a lot more out of these things a lot faster than you would otherwise, and it's tremendously powerful and important stuff. So head over to my Patreon and join it. In my Patreon group, the Illuminati, we have a saying that anyone that is not a patron is a bitch. So if you don't want to be a bitch, go join my Patreon. But seriously, folks, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Sorry I have to keep it brief tonight, because I could just talk about this subject for, an aeon until the stars crumble into the sea, until the light dissolves all the matter and it redintegrates into source. Hold on, I see question marks. Will I be okay to take less and get the normal effect? Taking not enough of a psychedelic is almost worse than taking too much, but it is better at first to err on the side of caution. So anyone that says that they don't know how to get it is not thinking at this point in human history, because on the internet, not even on the black web, you can order ALD52 from reliable sources. ALD52 becomes LSD on contact with water. 1P LSD is metabolized into LSD, so it's 30% less potent because the metabolization process eats up some of it. But yes, you do. Yes, you do. And basically, for just about any person that doesn't have any kind of mental health issues, 100 micrograms is going to be manageable. If you get overwhelmed by 100 micrograms, you have some sort of mental deficiency. You know what I mean? Like, you either have an abominably low IQ or you have some serious mental health problems or something. Like, for almost anyone on earth that is normal, and I'm not trying to put down the people that have those issues. I'm just saying that, unless you have some kind of serious problem, there's almost no one anywhere that's going to have a difficulty managing a 100 microgram trip, even usually, without, I don't know. I don't want to say you should do it alone, but I can't imagine having a hard time with 100 mics, and it would be a sufficient dose to have an experience. So yeah, you guys, these things are sacred. Dr. Albert Hoffman believed that the LSD molecule found him, that it chose him, that it was conscious and aware, and that it chose him to reveal it to the human race. So I wouldn't doubt it one little bit. He was an extraordinary little man. He was very tiny. And I wish I could have given him a big hug, because I feel like Dr. Hoffman did more for me than any other person. It did more for the planet, really, than any other person. I mean, without LSD, I can't even imagine how goddamn lame and awful this world would be. I guess eventually ayahuasca and mushrooms would have emerged from the jungles and the cow patties and stuff, and we'd still be all right. But, without the tidal wave of LSD that hit the United States in the 1960s, I just can't imagine how much worse it would be there, And conversely, if they hadn't lied about it and banned it, I can't imagine how much better the entire world would be. I mean, it really is the worst thing that the governments have ever done, banning psychedelics. Because all the other bad shit would have been it all would have been affected and negated, much of it. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I've got to warm up my voice and pop on and go over this material probably until about 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you are inclined, I'm playing Grateful Dead, Tool, Allman Brothers, and other random stuff. Maybe even some of my original music, which I don't have backing tracks for, unfortunately. But if you guys are inclined to that, keep an eye out, subscribe, hit the bell, join my Patreon. You can also support the channel via the options that are about to mysteriously appear in the chat below. I'm demonetized, and I do a lot of work to preserve ancient knowledge. We're going to ruins in Peru right now. I teach about the mysteries and plant medicine and trying to contribute to a revolution even. So if you support those things, it is fantastic and in line with your fundamental self to support. So there are the options in the chat if you want to make a one-time contribution to my PayPal, Zelle, or whatever. And I'm really trying hard right now because I really want to go to the Temple of the Sun and make this little mini doc. So help me make that happen. And we'll all be happy about it because it's apparently an unknown Machu Picchu, and that's crazy. Like, I just happened to tap into somebody that is hip to this sort of thing. And she's like, by the way, there's a place that's better than Machu Picchu that no one knows about. Would you like to go there? So, and apparently, like, we can go into tunnels where there are just elongated skulls still just laying around because I guess the Peruvian government doesn't really care, and there's just so many ruins here that they just don't really bother. They haven't excavated most of them. I went up to the ruins behind my house the other day, and there was a human skull in fragments with human teeth right in the trail, you know, and old Incan pottery smashed in the there were these big pots they kept grain in. It was part of one of those right in the trail, you know. And then there were these green peridot crystals all over the rocks. They're just in the trail. Like, no one takes anything. Most of them aren't, there's no spray painting, you know, there's no vandalism. Right in the city of Cusco even, you know, you go into these caverns with vitrified stone, which is where they heated it so much that it turned to glass almost, and they have no idea how they possibly could have done that. Like, you guys don't even know. If you haven't been here, you just cannot even begin to conceive of how insane it is. There are these, like, stone outcroppings kind of, but they're totally flat on top, and some of them are like a quarter-mile long, and they're definitely not natural. And the stone is rock hard, but I mean, like, hard even for rock. So it doesn't make any sense, you know, and there's no point to it. There's nothing, it doesn't serve any purpose. They even carved it in like crevices and stuff where you can barely, it makes no sense. And there's so much of it. So that's part of my mission here right now, is to try to figure out, you know, anything about what the hell was going on down here, because no one knows to this day what the fuck they were doing exactly. So I love you guys. I will be back with some music in 15, 20 minutes as soon as I feel like my voice is safe to sing Tool and Slayer, fucking Lamb of God, and all that stuff. And Grateful Dead, of course. Then Cradle of Filth. Maybe some Britney Spears. Y'all know how we do when we come through. All right, you guys, good night. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider joining my Patreon, contribute to the other shits that put money wherever it goes. And I'll see you guys in a bit.